Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says the lost straw is being further disabled. This article here is speaking about the rights of the disabled community in the prisons. Before we understand what this article is, a brief introduction. This article here takes the context of Father Stan Swami. Who is he? He happens to be an activist working in the state of Jharkhand for the tribal community. His work for them in expressing the labor rights when it comes to the forest rights as well as the land rights. This is one part of the story. He is also being accused of instigating violence when it comes to the Bhima Koregaon case. So he was arrested. This case was taken up by the National Investigating Agency as well, and in their charge sheet they have said that Father Stan Swami has connections to the Maoists. This is being investigated. So he is right now in the prisons. As we discussed, Father Stan Swami is about 83 years old. Since he is 83 years old, he is also suffering from the Parkinson's disease as well. This means he is a person who is currently in the prison but is also suffering from disability. So he is not a normal person. One, he is old. The other, he is disabled. So the article here is focusing on the rights of the disabled person when he is present in the prison. We have to focus on two important parameters. What are these rights? One, that which is present at the international level. The other is present at the national level. First, let us focus on the international level. When it comes to the international level, one of the most important law or the convention is the UN Convention on the Rights of the Persons with Disabilities. So this is an international convention which India is a signatory to. So kindly remember, it can be a very important question for your preliminary examination as well. So the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability is also being ratified by India. What do we have to understand here? When you look at the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, you have to categorize prisoners into three different categories. Let's say, for example, there are people who are on trial, they are under trial. Then there are people who are detained, like in Father Stan Swami's case. And third are the people who are convicted. In all these three cases, these are the people who are present in jail. So what does this convention say? In case there is a person who is stripped of his liberty, how stripped of his liberty? Because he is not in the society, he is not a free bird where he can go to the places that he wants. Instead, he is restricted within the four walls of the prison. So what it means is this person is stripped of the liberty. So what happens here? In case there is a person who is present in the prison, the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities says that all the dignity will have to be provided to this particular person. Whether this person is under trial, whether this person is convicted, whether this person is detained. So irrespective of who this person is, if he is in the prison and if his liberty is stripped and if he is a disabled person, dignity has to be restored to this particular person. So this convention says the duties, entitlements which the state is obligated to provide to that particular person in the jail will have to be provided. So the state, being the signatory in this particular case, has to make sure that all the rights that they have are provided. The authorities in the jail are taking care of the disabled person, and finally we have the prison staff as well who have to make sure that this person is not stripped of his dignity. India, being a signatory, will have to make sure it is complying by the UN Convention on the Rights of the Persons with Dignity. In case India, its authorities and its staff do not mandate, do not respect, do not implement it, it means we are violating some of the international conventions. We have to look at two important articles of UN Convention on the Right of Persons with Disability. One is Article 13. So kindly remember, this is not about Indian Constitution. It is about UN Convention on the Rights of the Persons with Disability. So we are speaking about the international law. And the second important article is Article 15. So what does this Article 13 speak about? It says that all those states which are party to this particular convention will have to make sure that all the procedural laws and age appropriate accommodations will have to follow it. So what are these? Let's say there is a prescribed law. It says there is a procedure. These procedures are laid by the national laws. Is this being followed? if it is followed, again there is an option of age related issue. In this particular case, Father Stan Swamy is an old person. He is also suffering from disability. So what should the government do? Apart from following the procedures laid, it also has to make sure that he is an old person, a senior citizen suffering from Parkinson's disease. So additional responsibility will go on the state to make sure that he is protected during this particular process. In fact, he is not convicted in this particular case. In fact, he is just going through that particular process. He is detained by the NIA. So all the respect, the sureties, the facilities which is accommodated in the procedure will have to be provided to Father Stan Swamy is the first article. Then we have Article 15 of this convention, which speaks about protecting that particular person and inflicting any forms of torture or inhuman acts and taking away his human rights is not acceptable, says Article 15 of this convention. So it places an obligation on the state to protect all persons with disability from cruel, degrading or inhuman treatment. These are the important articles when it comes to the UN Convention on the rights of the persons with disability. Then we have the International Covenant on the civil and political rights. What we have to look at is Article 10 of this convention. It says, in case there is a person whose liberty is stripped away, in that particular case, respect and dignity, even if he is present in the four walls of the prison, it has to be provided to that particular person. Just because his liberty is stripped, just because he's committed an act of crime, it should not be that his dignity is stripped off by the state. So it becomes a mandate of the government to make sure that there is respect accommodated to this person. Finally, we also have the Nelson Mandela rules, which was also approved by the United Nations General Assembly. There was a resolution passed in the year 2015. They also accepted to this particular fact that in case there is a person who's present in the prison because he's committed a crime, but he is suffering from physical, mental or other disabilities, equal access to this particular person on an equitable basis will also have to be provided. So these are some of the international laws which India has to make sure which it accords to a person suffering from disability when it comes to he present in the prisons. Then we also have to look at national laws and what the constitution speaks about. When you look at the Constitution of India, we have Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. Article 21 of the Indian Constitution speaks about right to life. It is not about the right to life, it is also about the right to live with dignity as well. This does not mean that he is treated in a inhuman fashion, he is tortured in the jails and his fundamental rights of 21 is violated. So the first thing that we have to recognize is Article 21 is being violated if there is a person with disability and he is not provided all the required status when it comes to his own rights as well as facilities. Then we have another law passed by the Parliament, that is the Rights of the Persons with Disabilities Act of 2016. India is a signatory to UN Convention on the Rights of the Persons with Disability. So it has to make sure that all these laws that are internationally accepted, which India is signatory to, is implemented. So India has come up with this legislation called as the Rights of the Persons with Disabilities Act of 2016. According to it, in case there is a person who is disabled, let's say he is suffering from Parkinson's disease or he has a spine problem or he has a mental health disorder, all these people will have to be treated with respect. All these people will have to be treated equally as well. And in case there is a provision that this disabled person also requires an aid, that aid will also have to be provided by the government as well. So what is the aid that we are speaking about? Let's say a person is not able to hear, so we have to providing the hearing device. Let's say the person is not able to walk. In that case, this person will have to be provided the wheelchair. So this Right of the Persons with Disabilities Act speaks about providing the aid. But there is a small catch here. This Rights of the Persons with Disability Act does not speak about the prisoners and disabled people who are present in the prison, but it explicitly makes a contention about the Parkinson's disease. Since we have Father Stan Swamy who is also suffering from this particular Parkinson's disease, it also mandates the government and the state to make sure all these important laws that is present under the Rights of the Persons with Disability Act is provided implemented and injustice is not delivered to the disabled. So what is that we have to understand here? In case there is a person who is disabled, who is present in the jail, he might be convicted under trial or he might be detained. For this particular person, he has his own set of rights. All these rights and facilities will have to be provided by the state. In order to make sure that this is done, the state will also have to sensitize its officers, the administrative personnel, so that all these are accommodated in this particular case. So treating them equally even in the prisons, providing them all the rights that they deserve in the prison houses is what needs to be guaranteed by the state, and especially to the disabled community, says the author in this particular case. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says slow progress. This article speaks about the viruses as well as the bacteria. There are millions and millions of bacteria as well as viruses. These viruses might be present in the mammals. It might be present in a particular species. So this particular species, which is housing that particular virus or the bacteria, it might not have any impact to that particular animal. Why? Because the virus has acclimatized to that particular animal and this animal is acclimatized to that particular virus or the bacteria. So they are in a kind of a relationship. It will not have any impact on this particular source. But there is a problem here. Let's say there is a particular animal that a man has consumed, or let's say any other animal has consumed. In that case, if this virus goes to a human being or if it goes to another animal, it can have disastrous consequence for this animal or it can be for the human being. So whenever this particular species is consumed by an animal or a human being directly, that virus, when it passes on to the next human being or to an animal, it can have a disastrous consequence. So what do we have? We have the source at the first point, or we also have the reservoir of this particular virus at the first end. Then at the second end, it can also be the human beings or it can be the animals. So when it is transmitting from the first end to the second point, that is where there is direct transmission of the virus or that particular bacteria. There can be another scenario as well. Let's take in this particular case, we have the bat. Bat happens to be the reservoir of the virus. The human being happens to be the third stage of this particular virus. But there is this intermittent stage. This intermittent stage is what is called as the intermediate host. So what is this intermediate host? Let's say for example, with respect to the COVID-19, COVID-19 did not come directly from the bats to the human beings. But instead, the scientific community says that from the bat, it went on to another species, and from that species, it was transmitted to the human beings. That is what is called as the intermediate host. So an intermediate host is where it happens at the central level. It is acting as the transmitting bridge from the source or the reservoir to the final entity. Now let's take some of the examples when it comes to this particular issue of SARS. What we have is bat as the source, and which happens to be the intermediate source. The intermediate source in this particular case happens to be the civet. Now when it comes to MERS as an issue, the intermediate host happens to be the camel. And when it comes to the COVID-19 right now, the scientific community is still not able to discover what is this intermediate host. So in the earlier cases, let's say for example with respect to SARS, we were able to identify which was the animal source within weeks. When it comes to the MERS coronavirus, we were able to identify the intermediate host within a year. And when it comes to the COVID-19, we are not able to discover, identify which is this intermediate host from which it was transmitted to the human beings. Now the important question that we have to understand is what is the importance of identifying from which source it is transmitted, from which intermediate host it was transmitted to the human beings. Why does it become important? Let's say if we have identified which is the host, we have identified which happens to be the original reservoir. In the near future, we might be able to make sure that this intermediate host does not have any reactions with the human beings. So what are we doing here? We are making sure that all the barriers are removed and the human beings are protected in the future case. So this discovery of the potential intermediate host or the source is very beneficial. Why? Because we would be able to prevent the transmission from the animals to the human beings on a timely basis, as this will help in reduction of the life as well as the property. This will also prevent any further deterioration with respect to loss of lives as well as with the economics as well. The identification is also important. That is because of the existing plants. If the source is already a known one, if the source is one which is actually reacting to this particular virus, we might already have the existing plants, the methodologies, or in specific cases vaccines as well. So it becomes very important to identify the source as well as the intermediate host. In all these cases, the better we are able to identify the source, the most faster we would be able to produce the vaccine as well as other important requirements, that which will cut down on the time consumption with respect to that disease. But there are impediments when it comes to the detection, is what the author says. So what are these impediments? Let's take the example of COVID-19. It is being said that Wuhan was the place where this particular virus was initially identified. That is what it is being said. But what exactly happens? We all know for the fact that China is also not transparent. It is ruled by the Communist Party of China as well. There is dictatorial and autocratic nature when it comes to their politics as well. Because of this, we have a possibility that even if the virus was detected in this particular region, we do not have any surveillance proof. Even if we had one, China is not ready to give it to the world. This becomes the first major impediment. So what is the major impediment here? We do not have the proof of the video. We do not know where exactly it was caused, and if it was caused in Wuhan, ideally the international community should have come over to this place, investigated about the source of this particular virus, and they could have distributed to the entire global community as well. But China, being a secretive country, did not accept this particular condition. Since we do not know the source, we do not know the intermediate host, the problem is we have to screen number of animals as well. So what are the similar characteristics that which might be prevalent with respect to the virus in that particular animal? Those animals will have to be segregated, and these animals will also have to be tested. Let's say, for example, this is just a hypothetical example. Let's say if this virus is present in the lion, if this virus is present in the tiger, or let's say this virus is present in any other animal, so the characteristics are segregated, and you literally have to test number of animals that are present in the forest as well. So this will ultimately be a time consuming process. Why? Because we do not have the proof, because we do not know the source of it, we have to literally make sure that the characteristics are identified, and we have to measure the source from different animals. So what will happen here? It will be a time consuming process, and as a result, the effective medicine, the effective source in this particular case might not be able to come up, and a conclusion cannot be derived, says the author in this particular case. So what are the various concerns? China ideally should have informed the World Health Organization and the global community on the right time, given the information about this particular COVID-19 in a much earlier way. Even if we did not, it need not had to sanitize that particular region in the Wuhan. So as a result, the global community is currently suffering with the virus spread so far, and since we are not able to zero in the intermediate host or the original source, it is becoming very difficult to find out which is this virus source that has been a problem, and as a result we would not have the significant aspects with respect to faster and efficient vaccine production, is what the author says. So going forward, what we require is a multi-pronged approach. So what is this multi-pronged approach? We require the global community to enter China. We also require the assistance of China, not because China is secretive, not because we want to interfere in their political aspects, but because we want to bring an end to this menace of coronavirus. So what we require is the multi-stakeholder approach where China entertains the global community enters into this Wuhan, identifies which is the source or the intermediate host, and ultimately bring a solution to this particular virus. So what we require is that we have understood that this COVID-19 is a complex issue. What we require is a sustained and a comprehensive set of scientific investigations that which has to be taken by the scientific global community in China is what we have to understand with reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. India became the part of this SCO back in the year 2017, and after being part of this organization from the year 2017, India for the very first time has hosted the summit in India. This happens to be a virtual summit which India has taken up for the very first time after it is being part of the SCO since the year 2017. What was the outcome of this virtual summit? All the members of this summit came up together. They had various discussions as to what should happen going forward. The first important point that they spoke about was in reference to COVID-19. The world has come to a standstill. So what we require is processes, mechanisms, and ensure that we are reinstating all the economic activities. So for the year 2021 and 2022, to overcome the socio-economic, financial and food consequences of COVID-19, all the plans, priorities and measures should be taken, says this organizational summit. The heads of the delegation also noted that we have something called as the field of prevention and elimination of emergencies, for which all the established information and data will have to be exchanged. Let's say there is all of a sudden a disaster, or let's say there is a tsunami that strikes, or let's say there is an earthquake that strikes a particular region. In all these cases, these are emergencies. So in case there is a country which has enough information as to how it has to be fought, and there are measures to counter these emergencies, such information will have to be shared and delivered, says the first important point. The heads of the delegation also spoke about enriching the cultural ties. Most of the countries have their own uniqueness with respect to their culture. This has to be strengthened on the basis of mutual understanding. The SCO member states as well as other states will also have to be entertained to preserve the cultural, historical, natural heritage that which is present in their country. The member countries also spoke about strengthening multilateralism and the UN Charter as well. Most of these countries in the SCO did speak about establishing the global order, respecting the rules that are present in the multilateral treaties, and also following the UN Charter for the respect with respect to all the countries. Finally, India, in an indirect reference to terrorism with respect to Pakistan, spoke about cross-border terrorism, which happens to be the biggest challenge for India. They did not make any reference to Pakistan, but in an indirect way, it spoke about cross-border terrorism emanating from the neighborhood. So India went on to say that terrorism, particularly cross-border terrorism, has become the enemy of the humanity. It has become a scourge, so we have to combat, says India, in an indirect reference to Pakistan. These are some of the outcomes with respect to the latest summit that we have had with respect to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The article in this case speaks about the significance and the importance of this particular summit. We have China, where we have issues along the line of actual control, and India is also not speaking to Pakistan for a number of years. Why? Because India has clearly said to Pakistan that terrorism and talks cannot go together. Pakistan has also been instigating India. It is also pushing in the terrorists into the Indian Union territory of Jammu and Kashmir, and it also has a policy of making India bleed through thousand cuts. So what we have is there is no direct talks between India and Pakistan. And at the same time, when you look at China as a country, it also has an expansionist policy. It also has issues along the line of actual control. It also has issues in the Arunachal Pradesh as well. So we have our border issues and skirmishes with China. India, as a result, might not have talks both with China and Pakistan bilaterally. So what does SCO do? The SCO indirectly will get all these three countries, India, Pakistan and China on a common platform so they would be able to sort out the differences. That is the significant factor, says the author in this particular case. The article further goes on to say that with this SCO, India is also making sure that it also has a balancing act. How is it a balancing act? Let's say, for example, India has entered into an agreement with United States of America in number of places, and it also has agreements with Japan and Australia as well. All these countries also come up in what is called as the Quad exercises. This means that United States of America, Japan, Australia come together, which is seen as India tilting towards United States of America. India has to balance this viewpoint. Why? Because you also have China, you also have Russia as well. So the SCO acts as a balancing act where it is not only tilting towards United States of America, but it is also respecting Russia on the other side, and is also being a part of the Central Asian process, is what the second part of the SCO argument. But we also have to remember that India is part of the SCO primarily because of Central Asia. When you look into the map of Central Asia, how can we reach Central Asia? One, we have to go through Pakistan, then we have to enter into Afghanistan and ultimately reach Central Asia. Why is India wanting to reach Central Asia? One is because of the exports, and two, it is also wanting some energy imports into India. But since we have a hostile relationship with Pakistan, we would not be able to go through this corridor. So what we usually do, we enter Iran, and from Iran we enter Afghanistan, and from Afghanistan we enter the Central Asia. So what we require in this particular case is good relationship with Iran and Afghanistan, and since we have the hostile relationship with Pakistan, India literally does not require the presence of the SCO is another point. Apart from this, okay, let's assume for the moment that all of us are part of the SCO. We are speaking to China, we are also speaking to Pakistan. If we are part of the SCO, if we speak to Pakistan, will our Kashmir dispute be resolved? No. Why? Because Pakistan does not believe in resolving this particular case. Or let's say, even with respect to China, we have had all the talks that are possible. If we are part of the SCO and if we are speaking to China, will our issues with respect to LOC and with respect to Arunachal Pradesh, which China claims it is part of Tibet, can it be resolved? No, once again. So what India has to do is that it requires a balancing act. It is part of the SCO only for the namesake, but rest of the activities are political in nature, which has to be sorted out with that particular country. So SCO is just a part of India's multilateral process, says this article. It is this that we have to understand with reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says why business barons should not run banks. This article in detail has been explained on 25th November 2020 under the third topic, RBI Internal Working Group Report on the Ownership of Private Banks. The link for the same will also be provided in our description box, so kindly look into it. An elaborate analysis for the same has been taken up, so you don't have to go through this article. Now let's look into some of the preliminary practice questions. Which of the following is or correctly matched? We have the security force and the regions of operation. Border Security Force, Pakistan and Bangladesh, Sahastra Seema Bal, Nepal, Indo-Tibetan Border Police, China and Bhutan. The answer to this is 1 and 2 only. Why? Because the Indo-Tibetan Border Police, yes, they do guard the Chinese border, but what we have to remember, it is not Bhutan as well, because the Sahastra Seema Bal is what guards the Bhutan region. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. So kindly remember, the BSF was raised in 1965. After the India-Pakistan war, there are about 2.65 lakh force which is deployed along the Pakistan and Bangladesh borders. The Indo-Tibetan Border Police is along China, and we also have Sahastra Seema Bal across Nepal and Bhutan. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following statements about Caspian Sea is or correct? It is the world's largest inland body of water. The Caspian Sea is endorheic. The major rivers, the Olga, Ural and Danube, empty into the Caspian Sea. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is 1 and 2 only. Why? Because you have the Olga and Ural which empty into the Caspian Sea, but Danube does not enter into the Caspian Sea. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference with respect to Azerbaijan issue. Now let's look into the next practice question. With reference to Purchasing Managers Index, which of the following statements is or correct? It is an indicator of business activity in the manufacturing sector only. The PMI is usually released every 6 months and is considered a good leading indicator of economic activity. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is none. Why? Because this indicator not only considers the manufacturing sector, it also considers the services sector. The PMI is not released every 6 months, but it is released every month at the start of the month. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. So kindly remember, when it comes to the Purchasing Managers Index, it says that there has been an improvement in the industrial activity, but the pace was slowed down and the employment has also declined significantly according to the Purchasing Managers Index. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following are envisaged by the right against exploitation in the Constitution of India? Prohibition of traffic in human beings and forced labor, abolition of untouchability, protection of the interests of minorities, prohibition of employment of children in factories and mines. Select the correct answer using the code given below. The answer to this is 1 and 4 only. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference to trafficking. Now let's look into the mains practice question. Denial of appropriate assistance and specialized healthcare access to a person with disabilities in custody is a violation of international commitments and state obligations. Discuss. Given the scale of complexity of COVID-19 pandemic, we need a sustained and comprehensive set of scientific investigations to find the intermediate host and virus origins. How is the discovery of intermediate host beneficial? Explain. So please write all your answers on the comment section, peer review, and also come up with constructive criticism. In case you have liked our initiative, please do like and comment on our YouTube videos. This is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.